Alrighty. So now that we can log in, it might be a good idea to start being able to chat finally. So what we're going to start off with is the server module, which actually is going to be very straightforward. So I'm probably just going to write the server module in its entirety right here. So let's go ahead and pop open source server modules chat. And let's get started. So the first thing is we need a chat log. Actually, we need some constants here. I'm going to go ahead and say const max history equals 100 lines, and then I'm going to say const batch size equals 10. What these constants are going to do is we'll only ever keep track of 10 whole, or of 100 whole messages, and then what we're going to do is once we hit 100, we're going to remove 10 of those messages. Just so in the case of message flooding, the splice operation on those 100 messages doesn't get triggered every single time a new message comes in right when it's on the edge of the buffer. And you can tweak those values depending on your use case. So let's start off with a send message function. Actually, let's start off with a send message validation function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my shared folder in my validation, and I'm going to create a chat chart, chat.js. And this chat.js file is not surprisingly going to contain the both the server and the client-side basic validation for chat messages. So I'm going to import underscore from Lodash. I love saying that because Lodash really replaced the underscore library. Import validator from / validator. And then I'm going to say export let message types equals normal. So sometimes in some chat applications, you might want to be able to send different kinds of messages. And in this case, we're only implementing one, normal. But sometimes you might want to allow different kinds of message types. And so I'm kind of coding ahead for that in case you might want to implement that yourself. Like, for example, if someone says /me is tired, for example, then this might be a self message type. But you also might want to restrict message types based off of the user's current authentication level, his current role, which is another great improvement I might suggest people look into. But let's go ahead and export function validate send message, user message type. These are the three parameters. We have a username, or user, a message, which is the text, and the type. Const validator equals new validator. If message length is greater than 50, validator.error message must be smaller than 50 characters. And then we can also say if not underscore includes message types type, then validator.error invalid message type. Remember, we do this check on both the server and the client, and although the user can manipulate the client-side code, he won't be able to manipulate the server-side code. And then return validator. And that's our validator. I'll leave that up on the right-hand side unless it starts getting a little annoying. But, all right, send message. So send message is going to take in a user, a message, and a type. I bet you guys didn't see that coming. And then I'm going to say message equals message trim. And then I'm going to say const validator. I'm actually going to add one more rule here. I'm going to say if message length equals 0, validator.error message cannot be empty. Or if message.trim.length. Okay, so we'll get our validator. We need to import our validator, of course. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to import validate send message from shared validation chat. And then down here, I'm going to create the validator by invoking the validate send message method, passing in user, message, and type. And then I'll move this maybe off the side a little bit. And then I'm going to say if not validator is valid, then return validator throw. And then I'm going to create the new message. So const new message equals, and it's going to have a user, and we're just going to copy the name of the user and the color of the user. We're not going to copy any other properties from the user. And then we're going to pass in message equals message. I could just do message here. That's an ES 2015 feature. This is the equivalent of message message. I do that sometimes. I don't like to do it here, though, because it makes things look a little weird and lopsided. Then we'll say time is new date dot get time. And then we'll say type is type. And then we'll say this chat log push new message. Really simple stuff. And then if this dot chat log dot length is greater than max history, or how about greater or equal to, then this chat log splice 0 batch size. So we'll truncate down the history by X amount of items. And then simply this IO emit chat added new message. That's it. All it is it's a broadcaster. It broadcasts out messages to everyone who's logged in, and that's it. So yeah, now we have to do our client API. So let's come down here, and let's say register client, and we'll do client on actions, and pass in our awesome object guy. And I'll say chat list. Remember to always do the arrow functions for these. That is a mistake that would be easy to mess up on and very difficult to debug. So sorry I'm getting a little annoying about repeating that every single time we do this, but seriously, that would you would spend time debugging that and it wouldn't be fun. Okay, so what we're going to do on chat list is simply return this chat log. That's it. Then what we're going to do is chat add, and chat add is going to take. I'm going to do some fancy deconstructing here. Remember, we can use deconstructing in ES 2015, but remember we can only pass in one argument with our system, so we have to deconstruct it. So I'm going to say what the client is going to send is message and type. And then if they don't send a type, I want it to default to normal. So type equals type or normal. Then I want to say const user equals this users dot get user for client, and I'll say if not user, then we failed. So return a fail that we're not logged in, which means we have to import the fail function. So let's scroll up to the top, and we'll import it here. We'll say import fail and success from shared observable socket. And then we'll scroll down here to the bottom. And if not user, return a fail, you must be logged in. Otherwise, then we simply say this dot send message, passing in the user, the message, and the type. And then we return nothing, which will return an observable.empty at the end. And that's it. So I can scroll up here. Success was never used, so let's remove that. So ESLint shuts up. I complain so much about ESLint saying that. It's actually really good practice to not have unused variables. Otherwise, things get weird. But with ESLint enabled, we know that all these variables are being used and there's no dead code, which is, well, not necessarily no dead code, but no variables that are useless. Anyway, this is our chat module. Not a whole lot to say about it. So let's build our chat store. Chat store is going to be also, it's actually going to be even shorter than our chat module. So let's close out both of these files, and let's open up our server, or whoops, client stores. Oops, we haven't even created the chat store yet. So let's go ahead and just create it. Chat.js. And chat.js is going to import, do we have an, yeah, we do have to import observable from RxJS. And we're going to import validate send message from shared validators chat. And then we're going to export class chat store with a constructor that takes in a server and a user store. And then we're going to say this server equals server, this users equals user store. And then we're going to say this messages equals Rx observable merge. And we're going to merge on server on chat list dot flat map. List goes into observable from list. I'll talk about this in a second. And then we'll do server on money chat added. And then we'll publish replay 100. And then, whoops, not Rx observable. We just imported the observable directly. And then this message is connect. And then server on connect. Now, in this case, I'm going to say server on connect dot first, and then subscribe. So actually, I'm going to do on money, and then subscribe to server emit chat list. All right, so what's going on here? Well, what's cool about this is our messages is literally just going to be a stream of messages, and you'll get the first 100 that appear, and then after that, you will get the subsequent messages that as they come in. And we accomplish this by saying, okay, if the server ever gives us a chat list, go ahead and break it apart. This flat map observable from is actually a very common pattern in reactive extensions, where we say, okay, so you sent me a stream of an array of a bunch of items, but what if I wanted a stream of a bunch of items? So what this flat map observable from does is it deconstructs that list into individual messages that are sent. And then all we have to do is merge that with our chat added event, and suddenly we now have an observable stream of messages from the server. I don't know, I think that's pretty cool. But then we do our publish replay, and be sure to connect, because we don't have any subscribers to messages yet, but we do want these event handlers to be hooked into socket.io. So we want to have to connect that. And then on server connect, we only grab the first one. So only the first time we connect to the server do we re-request the chat list. You know, since we're here, we might as well do our send message. So I'll say send message money, message. We'll do const validator equals validate send message, and we're going to pass in this user's current user, followed by message, followed by normal. And then I'm going to say if not validator dot is valid, then I believe in the case of our user store, when we log in, we just returned observable throw message validator message. So return observable throw message validator dot message. And then otherwise we return this server emit action money chat add, and then we construct the chat message, which is simply going to be message followed by, so message goes into message and type goes into normal. Actually, we can clean this up a little bit. I'm going to say const type equals normal. Right now, how about accepting it as a parameter? That would be even better. We're not going to do anything silly with that yet, but or in the series. But I did want to show you guys it being used. So we'll default type to normal, and then we'll pass it in here. And then when we construct the message, I am, in this case, going to use the ES 2015 syntax. I'm going to pass in message and type, which is the same thing as passing in message, message, type, but I'm doing this syntax here because it doesn't feel as lopsided, because I don't have some using the syntax and some not using the syntax. But anyway, I think that turned out pretty well. Now let's hook up our form. So to do that, we need to go to our components chat form.js, and we need to take a dependency on the chat store. So I'm going to say comma chat store, and I'm going to say this underscore chat equals chat store. And then at the bottom here, on the send message, I'm simply going to replace this. Send message, I'm going to put in that property here. Remember, send message does get the value from the text box, but to make ESLint happy, I removed it temporarily. And we're simply going to return this underscore chat dot send message money message dot catch wrap, and then dot do this input dot val is now blank. So we send the message and then we clear out our chat. All right, we do need to propagate our chat store now through the rest of our components. So take a look at that method, but we do need to pass in the chat store into our chat form component. So let's go to our main root component and add a new dependency on chat store and say this chat equals chat store. And then for our chat form component, we'll pass in this chat. And then for our import on services, we're going to import both user store and chat store. I know we haven't created chat store yet, but we will. And then at the bottom, when we create our chat component, we have to feed that through. It would be really cool if we had a dependency injection framework. That would be awesome. But stuff and things. So now we have our chat store being passed to our chat component, and then the chat store being passed again into the chat form component. But now we have to actually create our chat store. So let's go into services, and let's export const chat store, which we need to import first. Import chat store from stores chat. And we'll say chat store equals new chat store, and it wants a server as well as a user store. All right. I want to do one more thing before we test this. I'm going to go into our chat component, and I'm going to open up our main chat component. And on the chat list component, I'm going to go ahead and take a dependency on the chat store. But interestingly enough, I'm actually also going to take a dependency on users. So I'm going to add users in chat and server. And that's going to require on the chat component that I do this underscore server equals server, and that I add that in. I'm going to add this in as the first parameter. I like the server to be the first parameter, so I'm going to move this around just a little bit. I don't feel too bad about moving that around because we haven't created this constructor yet. So we take in this server, this users, and this chat. Now we have to make sure to pass the server into the constructor of the chat component. I'll tell you why in a second. So let's import server from services. And then let's scroll down, and on the chat component, remember the server is now the first parameter. So we pass in the server, then the user store, then the chat store. All right? And now let's go into our chat list. And chat list takes the server, user store, chat store, and I'm going to alias all that, or put those all into fields. So underscore server equals server. I'm actually going to do that right after the super call. This users equals users store, and this chat store equals, chat equals chat store. And then what I'm going to do here on attach, or underscore on attach, I'm going to say, we'll be ripping this up here in the next video, but I just want to see that this works. I'll do chat.messages.comp subscribe, this message goes into, and then I'm going to say this element append jQuery new li dot text message. And of course we have to import jQuery for that to work. So import money from jQuery. And there you go. So now we have some visual representation of the chat messages. So let's come back to our thing, and cannot resolve file or directory. It really doesn't want to resolve shared validators chat. And that's most likely because I misspelled something. That's going to be happening in our store, chat.js, shared validators chat. Did I call it something different? Shared validation. That was my mistake. Okay, come back here, and we are up and running. Let's go ahead and reload. Okay, enter a username, bleh, and let's type a chat message. Check that out. If I come over here and refresh, check that out. Not only did those appear, but I got all the history. And now for this guy can go in and also add messages. And we have a synchronized chat room, which might not look so impressive because it's kind of what we did in the introductory to Socket.io and Express, but I hope you guys can appreciate the improved architecture and some of the awesome stuff we are about to do to that chat list. But I think this wraps up this video. We have that all working, and that's awesome. So I guess we will see you guys in the next one.